right, we're all set.
It's setting it up right now. Okay.
All right. Good evening, everyone. The meeting of the board is now called to order at 7 p.m. Before we begin tonight's meeting.
Yeah, it's setting it up right now. We're good. There's a little bit of a delay. You're good.
Okay. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I would ask everyone to please turn off all electronic devices during the meeting. All right. Good evening, everyone. The meeting of the board is now called to order at 7 p.m. Before we begin, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, it's setting it up right now. We're good. There's a little bit of a delay. You're good. Hold on.
Okay. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I would ask everyone to please turn off all electronic devices during the meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty.
I'm hearing a delay on both things on my screen. Okay, all right.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Mike, so moved.
Carla, second.
Any discussion?
Okay, thanks.
Here?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're going to move right into our discussion items. First up is going to be our 2021 budget discussion. I'm assuming I am going to pass the torch to Mr. Pecos.
Okay, had to figure out how to unmute. Everybody should have this. We went through this whole document in a previous meeting. I don't think you want me to go through this ad nauseum tonight. What I thought I would do is use the other document that talks about the reductions that were made to balance the preliminary budget to this one, if that's all right, or if you like, I can go through the larger document, whichever you prefer.
I would say the summary.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
That's fine, Dan.
All right, short one it is. So on page 1 of that document, it showed the cuts that were taken out from the very first run of the budget to get to the preliminary budget that we went over before. That hasn't changed. Those cuts have not changed. On page 2, then we talked about, I highlighted how we got from our previous budget gap of just about $250,000 to the point of what we needed to balance. And we had a almost $454,000 reduction in state aid in the adoption of the final state budget. So we included that in the gap. We also included $266,333, which was half of the pandemic adjustment that was included in the final state budget. And that was to estimate additional state aid that we could lose as part of the quarterly adjustments that the state included in the final state budget. You'll recall there's a provision in the final state budget that's new this year, and it allows the state to reduce our state aid throughout the year based on actual revenue collections. So we took half of the pandemic adjustment that was included in the final state budget and included a provision to not receive an additional amount of $266,000. We added back building aid for phase 1 of our capital construction projects. I have filed the final cost reports for phase 1. We should see that in the current year, but I have my doubts only because of the COVID closures. I don't know if the state will get that paperwork processed in time for us to receive it this year. If we do, it'll go into our fund balance at the end of the year and we'll use it against next year. We'll be short revenue and it'll close to the fund balance at the end of the year. But either way, we're going to use it to balance this budget. And then we also estimated a 20% reduction in our Erie County sales tax revenues. And for what I'm seeing so far, that seems to be right in line. Now, If the second half of the fiscal year, if those bounce back up, we could be good. But for right now, I think 20% is a good number to use. So we took out an additional 565,000 in Erie County sales tax revenues. We had also included in the previous run of the budget, almost 121,000, 120,871 for possible retirements. That was the breakage on teaching retirements. We had not received any as of the point when I was working on this. So I put the breakage back in because we couldn't count on it. And then there was a music teacher that one teacher had left and another one had started, and I ran our salary projections right in between those two, and I missed them both and didn't include either one in the first cut of the budget. So I added that position back in. So it gave us a total gap of $1,322,231. Then on page 3 and page 4, I've got the list of the items that were removed or adjusted in the budget to close that gap. And I'll just run down them in the order they're on here. And these are not prioritized. On some of the previous lists, some of the stuff was listed, so I left it. I didn't retype it all. So this is just an unprioritized list. We reduced our BOCES public relations specialist from 3 days a week back to 2. That saved $22,833. We had budgeted to split an additional school resource officer with the town and with the Seneca Nation. We've removed that for $27,500. We are looking to eliminating the provisional HR clerk position in the business office. We had budgeted for 2 new placements of middle schoolers in the P-TECH program in Dunkirk. And what we did is we're holding off and not sending 2 new kids into this cohort this year because we said for $40,000 that basically funds the teacher. We reduced our allocation for musical instruments from $30,000 down to $20,000 in this next budget. So that saved $10,000. And then we've reduced 5 elementary teachers. The first 3 on the list are the 3 least senior teachers. You'll recall on the previous cut list, we were looking at the 5 least senior. We have 2 retirements under the retirement incentives. So the two highest seniority teachers have been restored, and the 2 positions that are coming out are the 2 that are retiring. So we just won't replace them. So you'll see the breakage on those is a lot higher. We have an art teacher at the secondary level that won't be filled, and that's so that's basically cut through attrition. There's a retirement there. We have a speech therapist that's the least senior. And again, that was for speech improvement services, not IEP services. We have a high school social studies teacher, and that's based on enrollment. A high school science teacher and a half. There's chemistry and biology that factors into there. And science is a little different on the certification level. You have to look at which area of science they're certified in. So that's actually a teacher and a half there. We have the least senior school counselor that came out. That was for $80,319. And these salary amounts that I'm listing are salary and Social Security and retirement. The least senior teaching assistant at the high school level was also removed, in that that person was staffing the grad point room last year. We'll staff that with teachers for the coming year. And then the next 2 teaching assistants are at the elementary level, and those were basically for the K-1 literacy initiative, but those have also been removed. We reduced the 10-month clerical staff at the high school. This is a smaller amount because that 10-month employee is not the least senior, so she'll bump the least senior out of a 12-month position, then she'll go to 12 months. So this is the breakage overall from those changes. We reduced the high school technology energy specialist teacher. Included in the original budget and in the governor's state aid proposal was a set aside for community schools. And we had to earmark that money specifically for something along the lines of social and emotional learning. And we had budgeted for a new psychologist position. That provision came out of the final state budget. The community school set aside money is not there for us. So we removed that position because we're not required to earmark it. The Board of Ed had me reduce their your conference line by $7,500. And then we also did the $30,000 savings from the proposed solar power purchase agreement with AES, and then also reduced elementary summer school. I think I hit the wrong figure on a previous, because I forgot we had K through 3 and 4 through 6. And I think I only gave you half of that dollar amount initially. So it was 50,000 plus the benefits. So that was the 58,950. And that balances the budget. That brings it down to the total figure of page here, $60,057,225. That's detailed in this bigger document. That's a $74,438 increase over the current year, or 0.12%. And then to balance that, we need a tax levy of $18,102,600. And that is $3 under our tax cap limit of 1.43%. So the tax increase would be $254,704. You can see the tax increase is bigger than the budgetary increase, and that's because of the reduction in the state and county sales tax revenues. This budget includes all of our breakage on the retirements we've received so far. Our plan would be then, if we receive additional retirements, this budget would stay the same. We would keep that breakage in the budget for any further retirements. If we get a retirement, say in an elementary where we're laying off a couple people, we would call back a person to make up that position, but we'd keep the difference between the salaries in this budget, and that will help offset any additional state aid cuts that we might see. They're saying we could see a state aid cut as much as 20%. If we do that, we would have to go a lot deeper than that. So I'm hoping that they backfill with some federal money, or that the cuts aren't as bad as 20%. And I'm not sure if 20% would only be on the foundation aid amount, or if it would be on total state aid, but we get about 30 million in state aid. So 20% is going to be sizable if we see a cut like that. So our plan here, we've reduced some costs down. We've tried to look at in all areas of the budget, not just instructional, but we went to the BOCES budget. We looked at hardware, we looked at supplies, we looked at some of our curriculum development and our in-service. We took out our administrative job coach through U of R. We looked at additional revenues where we could. We reduced some out-of-district placements in BOCES spots. Kind of the same approach we took when we were balancing budgets through the GEA. The only problem is now we don't have firm state aid figures. They're allowed to change them quarterly throughout the year. So I would say this is as good a plan as we're going to get without firm numbers. I mean, we've planned for some cuts. We've got provisions in here in case the cuts go deeper, and we'll roll with it. I think it's as good as any, and probably better than most. But anybody have any questions on the budget? Cindy, you sent me some questions earlier. Did you see my responses?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, you're welcome.
I missed that part of the meeting last time when you must have done the whole shebang.
Yeah, some of that we went over early on, like the science kit stuff. I mean, I totally forgot. I had to go to Melissa earlier at dinner time and say, what was that change for? And then she reminded me. But
Thank you. I got just
the other stuff I remember.
simple questions. I just wanted clarifications. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything else? All right. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Dan. Next on our discussion item is the end of year. So Charlie?
So the end of the year. So there are so many questions, and it's like every time somebody asks a question, there's another question on top of the question. So, the governor's decree basically said school we will end or go through the end of the year. So there won't be any classes till the end of June. There wasn't really any particular guidance as to what that date is. So we're still waiting for some more guidance in terms of whether or not districts are able to set the date on their own. We're supposed to be getting some kind of word from the state ed department and or the governor by the end of this month. So I'm thinking we'll be hopefully sooner, and we'll be able to take a look and see what that particular date is. I know you might have heard there are other districts out there that have already set their date. And that's fine that they want to do that. We don't want to do that right now and do it prematurely and tell everybody this is the date. And then something else comes from the state ed department that says, no, you have to go to the end of whatever your regular calendar would have been. So that's why we're waiting on that in terms of actually letting people know when the last date for students are and when the last date for teachers will be. So that's basically the answer for that question.
Thank you, Charlie. Does anybody have any other questions as far as?
Do we have any information or any thoughts on any of the activities that the kids are losing out on? I mean, graduation being one of them.
Well, sure. I mean, you look at graduation, you look at prom, you look at all the concerts that we haven't had, you're looking at all the athletics that we haven't had. This is something that obviously nobody's ever gone through before. So kids are really missing a lot, and we really do feel for our seniors. The high school is thinking of different plans that they can have in place, working with the advisors, working with kids, talking about what it is they want to do. A lot of it is predicated based on health and safety and what we're able to do. So I can throw out 5 different ideas, but then if we can't do any of them, people are going to say, well, how come you didn't do that? Well, if we can't have more than 50 people in an area, you can't do a certain plan, so a lot of it is dependent upon what we're able to do in terms of social gathering. There's lots of virtual kinds of things that they're looking at. I know that we had talked about one time that, people are using drive-ins to be able to social distance and doing those kinds of things. But so a lot of it is going to depend upon what the guidance is health-wise. So as soon as we get that guidance, then we'll be able to have a better and clearer picture as to what we can do.
Charlie, do you know, I haven't seen anything, but in the phases of reopening that they've outlined, included in that, have they mentioned gatherings of certain numbers of people being allowed through those phases?
Well, from what I've seen from the governor when he's on TV, I'm usually in another Zoom meeting at the time, but when you look at those slides, it looks like schools are like the very last part of the community that can open. So when you're talking about having 150 kids in one spot or any kind of a gathering, there's going to have to be a lot of phases that are implemented first. So I haven't really seen any particular number, because remember when they first came out, it was like no more than 50. No more than 250, no more than 50, no more than 10. So I haven't really heard anything other than that. In terms,
And I think we're still at no more than 10,
Yeah.
I believe.
I haven't heard anything more than that. I know that when we are in our office, there's only a couple days a week when we have a lot of the business staff and we're all wearing masks and we're social distancing and really pretty much staying away from each other the best we can. So we're being real careful just with having, the 6 or 7 people that we have in the office.
Charlie, it's hard to
Has there been
say.
any-
Do we have any kind of timeline for when we'll have a plan for how we're going to close out the year for, I mean, for all of our students, but in particular, our seniors?
Yeah, well, again, I think at some point I'm thinking it's gonna have to be like by June 1st. We're waiting from guidance. It's supposed to be either later, like on the 15th of May or towards the end of May. But at some point we do have to make a decision. I know that the kids really don't want to do a virtual type of a program, but that might be all we are allowed to do. We're not sure yet. So we're kind of like waiting to the last minute so that we can hopefully do something that's a little bit more personal for kids. So again, it's a question that leads to another question.
How much notice do you think we'd have to give of anything we're gonna do? Is it a couple weeks, a month?
Well, like I know that
Families and
Christine,
graduates.
I know that Mrs. Cook is and her staff are, they're real involved with the counselors and the seniors. And like at the elementary level, there's going to be some arrangements for student pickup for lockers and those kinds of things. That'll be coming up soon. But we want to be able to give people as much notice as we can and still make a decision that is hopefully where the kids want to go. We could just say right now we're going to do virtual, but then if a ban gets lifted, or if we're able to have more people, then that plan was sort of on the shelf. So we're trying to give ourselves as much time as we can before we have to make the final decision.
Will all the buildings have students come and pick up stuff that, they've left in their lockers or whatever?
Yes, but they're not going to be coming into the building. It'll be sort of a drop where people will come in with their cars, and we'll have staff out there handing people their things through their cars so that they're not coming into the building.
Okay.
Charlie, has there been any kind of, I know I've seen 1,000 different stories on this, but do we know from the Board of Regents who are state ed, what is the graduation threshold? Kids moving up to the next grade? I mean, is this still fluid until June or?
Yeah, well, Melissa might be able to help with that too. But when you're looking at the continuity of education, of learning, we are able to take a look at the learning that's being presented and base progress on student learning based on what is being returned and how the teachers are interacting with the students. So as you know, there's no Regents exams in June or in August, so a lot of it is going to determine the type of work that is being submitted and what's going on between the teachers and the students, either through virtual or through paper and pencil. Most of our people are able to do things online. I know that Jeff has given out and loaned over 400 Chromebooks and 75 hotspots and about 72 iPads. So it's been an ongoing process. If a family needs something, they can call their principal, and then we can get them more technology equipment that they might need. So it's really going to be based on what the teachers are pushing out and how it's being returned.
Have we decided anything? I'm sorry. Go
Just
ahead.
to get just one more question, just a little more granularity. If we have a student in the high school, middle school who before the pandemic was in a failing mode, or in a scenario of being near the bar, and I've seen my kids, a lot of them isn't pass fail, but I'm not actually getting grades. Is there going to be scenarios where it's status quo and that's where they're going to stay? Or do you see scenarios where it's actually grades and GPAs, Melissa, can be raised or lowered with just assignments being handed in? I'm just trying to get a good glimpse of the 20 parents that we're going to get calls from of why their kid didn't graduate and they were online every day.
Right. Go ahead, Melissa.
So if kids participate and engage, complete their work, they will move on. If they don't engage, which we have some that are not touching anything, then we'll go case by case to see what their status was at the end of the second marking period. And they may have to attend summer school. We're planning for a full summer school, probably remotely. Will just depend on how that goes and what we're allowed to do. But really, we need kids to engage and participate in their learning, and they'll be okay. I hope that, I don't know if that helps you or if you have.
It does. So if they were at a failing grade or a very failing grade prior to this, are you saying if they participate, they're moving on?
Yes, they can redeem themselves. We're trying to offer many different opportunities for kids. There are a few scenarios where we're customizing based on their preference of learning and if they're currently working, because some kids are working to help support their families. So letters have gone out, progress reports. And so, you know, we're doing everything we can. Charlie's going to visit homes to see if they need something that we're not getting them. We're doing wellness checks. So we're, you know, there'll be different cases, I'm sure, that we're not aware of and what's going to happen. But for the most part, they participate. They can, you know, they'll move on.
So if they participate, even with where they were, they will move on to the okay.
So
Melissa,
we're letting the teachers sort of plan what kind of grading they're going to use. Is it just going to be a pass fail? Yes, they participated, they pass.
It's a pass fail. Participation means they complete the work. And so we have a plan in Power School where they go in and they mark what is completed and not. However, it has to be completed with quality, right? So it doesn't mean they have to get 100 or anything like that, but they're setting some standards with the kids, and they have multiple opportunities to finish work. And I think I answered all your questions, Carla. I was trying to remember. I think there was a series of them, but if kids can help themselves 100% by just getting in there, participating and completing the assignments. And we're trying to balance, we're hearing sometimes it's a little too much or not enough, and we're trying to balance that and learn that along the way. So I hope that helps.
Okay, thanks.
Have we been
Is it
able
a
to make
small
contact
number
with
of-
all students?
I couldn't hear everybody, I'm sorry.
You can go first, Kathleen.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask, is it a small number of students that you're finding are engaging,
It's not
or
what
is it considerable?
it's not what we hope. You know, we're hearing stories where some are saying I have 80% participation, and then we're hearing some that's 40%, but we are relentless in our work and trying phone calls to knocking on doors, you know, trying to contact someone else. We have a teacher who went into someone else's Zoom meeting to say, hey, where is your brother, kind of thing. You know, we're doing the best we can and trying. So I have multiple success stories, and I have some that I feel very, you know, frustrated with, but we're continuing to try. We're not alone. Other districts are telling us the same thing.
Sure.
Mike, did you have a question?
No, it pretty much mirrored what Kathleen asked. We were just asking at the same time.
I mean, 100% honesty, it's more than I want. We have a lot that aren't engaged, and we're trying to be very cautious in how we reach out. You know, we've sent letters as well and emails to kids, but some of our kids are in homes of essential workers without a lot of support. Some kids are working, some kids are choosing not to, you know, but you know, this time right now, I also worry greatly about mental health of our kids. So that's why I'm very cautious when I say, you know, they'll move on if they participate, but there will be opportunities for kids to continue to move forward. We just have to find the way that works best for them.
Which level does
Charlie,
it be at, like, of a particular issue? Does it seem to stand out, whether it's elementary, whether it's middle, whether it's high school, or are the reachability issues across all levels?
I think it's across all levels. I'm shocked when I hear an 80%, but then I'm shocked when I hear a 40% participation rate. And it doesn't seem to stand out any more than the other. It just causes me more concern at the high school, because I would think that because of their age level, they have a little more opportunity to be, to be driven to get some work done. But I also don't know their scenario. So I'm just trying to figure out how we can help them so they can continue.
so
you know,
what are we hearing, Charlie, when you go to students' houses? What are you hearing as the barriers that these families are running into getting their kids to participate?
Right. So when I go on visits, you know, I say, you know, Dr. G, you know, just seeing how you guys are doing. Do you need any technology? Do you need any help with anything? No, we're good. So I'm okay. Well, we're keeping track, and you really haven't, you know, you haven't really come online. What do we need to help you do? No, we're gonna get started. We're gonna get started. And so then, you know, I have that list, and then I call back and check with the principal, and then they check with the teachers and let me know. And I would say out of the 30 kids that I visited, probably about 18 or 19 started kind of like right away, you know, so, again, it's going to be effective for some. And like Melissa said, we don't really know everybody's circumstance. You know, so we're just trying the best we can to make as many connections as we possibly can. And then, you know, come next year, we'll do everything we can to help those kids that weren't able to engage the way that they wanted to.
How many seniors is a result of this? Maybe in
Let's-
jeopardy of not graduating, of not connecting? Is that known?
Yep. If you give me a second, on the list that I had, you know what, it's actually on the front seat of my car because I was making some visits today. I noticed about 11 seniors that were on the list. Now, that doesn't mean that they haven't been, I don't know what their status was necessarily before COVID hit, you know, so, but they really need to get started. I went to one student's house the other day and I went about 11 o'clock. I thought that might be a good time, but you know, nobody answered the door. So I left a note, you know, in the mailbox, you know, telling the child to give me a call, you know, if there's anything that they needed, because they really need to get going, you know, so, you know, Mrs. Cook and the counselors would know exactly which one of those students that I have on my list might be in jeopardy of not graduating. So now that we know that the closure is until the end of June, we're going to double back, take a look at that list again, and then find out exactly the answer to that question, like exactly where they were before March.
Thank you.
I have a question. Melissa, you said that you are concerned about the mental health of our students. What are we doing to make sure our kiddos are okay?
Well, we're trying lots of things. I mean, I have preached since the beginning, and we send weekly letters to our teachers, and we've talked individually that they should be making phone calls. They should be contacting families. You know, I'm hearing now that some are not, and, you know, we'll work on that. I'm disappointed to hear that, but for the most part, I have lots of celebratory stories to tell you that teachers are making connections. We have a teacher who went to a front porch and grandpa knew she was coming, and the little girl came out and they sat far apart and had a nice conversation and talked about, you know, what she should be doing and how to improve and continue to learn. And now she's a younger student. She gets to read with the principal on Fridays during this method. That's been very rewarding and exciting for her. We have our school social workers in full gear, along with all of the other services we've had. They're doing this with kids to connect, promoting different resources in that way. But I can't stress enough to all of us that this is the power of our voice, the power of connection. This isn't about academics. We need to make sure that they're okay. And we write a weekly letter. It goes out every Monday via email to our entire staff. And I'm trying to give a time that I have not talked about. And this past week, yesterday, the whole letter was about how much this matters. And so, you know, I can't do schoolwork. That's why this is about participation and getting on. I just need to know you're okay. And that's what a lot of teachers are doing now. I have teachers in tears who are trying. They're calling, they're emailing, they're calling moms, they're sending letters, they're dropping off notes, and we can't get anything back. You know, we hear from others, oh, they're fine, they're just not doing it or whatever, but that's even okay as long as I know people are okay. But, you know, we have teachers who are relentless in trying to contact and get kids engaged, and they're feeling very low and despondent at times as well when they prepare so much and sometimes only 3 or 4 kids show up. So I hope that I can't tell you we're perfect. We're building the plane while we're in the air, but boy, there are a lot of success stories of trying, and I'm proud of that.
It's good. Yeah, me too. It sounds great. And it's definitely the right mindset. How are we helping the teachers through all this too? Because I know they're probably stressed out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So besides promoting, you know, different resources that they can participate in around wellness that are like this, we have 4 sessions. The third one is tomorrow that teachers could sign up for with Daryl Tonema. Dr. Tonema spoke to us at the beginning of the year. He also has done work with our students, And he is offering us sessions about how COVID-19 is affecting our mental health and what we might anticipate from students who are returning, or even what's happening now and what happens to us physically. And he kind of puts us through some techniques for breathing and reminding us how to do different things like that. And then yesterday, Garage Fitness offered a free fitness class for our teachers to take. And at the end of it, it was a mindfulness piece. And while we didn't have probably as many as I would hope, we had quite a few, and I participated in that with them. And by the end, even though Judy worked us hard, at the end, when we had our moment of mindfulness and a guest that came in to help us with that, I could feel my heart rate feeling better. And I actually didn't realize how tense I was. So we're certainly trying that as well. And then when I talk about the letter and the power of connection, it's about connecting with each other. If I haven't heard from a teacher in a while, or a principal hasn't, we talk to the principal, and I talk to our LSCTA president and say, have you heard from this person? So we're just kind of trying to monitor and check on each other as much as we can.
It's great. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I guess I have a question that I know there's no answer to, or not much of an answer to, but I mean, I guess it's what comes next. I know that September in Corona years, Corona time, September is like 9.5 years away, but it'll be here at some point. I know we have a lot more information that needs to come from the state, a lot more guidance, a lot more time needs to pass, but what are the next steps to start to plan for what the fall looks like?
So, what we're going to be doing is basically taking a look at all the different things we might need to look at what pertains to reopening, safety, what kind of equipment we might need, what might the schedule look like, how many kids can we put on a bus, what will the day look like? I'm sure you've heard different things, in the news and the media about, longer days, but staggered starts, or different partial part virtual, part in person, so we're kind of trying to think about all those different things, and then also trying to see exactly where it's going to be and what we're going to be allowed to do. It's definitely going to be different, and I guess maybe one of the positive things through all this is that even if we were able to come back just like it was before March, I think that the teachers have really learned a lot about the use of technology, and it could be another great way to be able to connect with kids and give even more support now that they might be used to it a little bit. So we're also looking at the positives, in terms of how we might be able to use technology to help remediate some of the loss of learning that some kids might have. So we're kind of really looking at all that. I don't know if you've seen different kinds of, there was a YouTube video where there was a little boy went through a station and they were like spraying him down. And then he went to another station and had his hands under ultraviolet light and, all different kinds of things. But, there are really just so many unknowns, but we're going to be working closely with the teachers, with probably our police chief and even supervisors and things once we figure out exactly how this is going to affect and what we need to put in place, and in terms of what's going on with construction and those kinds of things too, to make sure that
I sat through a webinar on Friday from Hodgson Russ about what things to consider for reopening whenever that may be. And everything that you said, Charlie, was in that particular presentation. They also talked about specific legalities, like what happens when you have teachers who can't be in a crowd, can't come back because of conditions that are at high risk. If we haven't really changed our patterns,
right,
you still have to be kind of doing social distancing. What do you do with that? How do you handle that? How do you, same thing with parents who don't want their kids to come back because of that. How do you deal with those legalities? The bottom line, of course, they kept saying at the beginning and at the end that there are so many more questions than there are things to think about, that we really are hoping that there's a lot of guidance from the state a lot of specifics that we're going to get, and they're on it. They're going to be, working with the governor's office and trying to, bring all the questions to them. So
Right.
that we hear something. That's what, that I took away from it. More importantly than everything else,
Yeah, it's really, yeah, it's really a balance trying to answer those questions and get information out, but you don't want to get information out if it can change the next day. Because then it looks like, why didn't they think about this or what about that? So I know that all districts are just working very hard to be able to to go through all the weeds and be able to come up with plans that are going to best fit our new reality. So it's tell you, it's going to be a lot of work over the summertime, that's for sure.
Okay. So next on our list was class of 2020, which I think we covered, unless anybody has any other questions on that. 2020 summer school Eagles Landing.
Okay, so the same thing with Eagles Landing. We don't know whether or not and how we're going to be able to use our buildings. And whether or not the town is going to be able to even run daycare camps or those different kinds of things for kids. So a lot of it, again, depends upon health issues and what we're allowed to do in terms of kids coming together. We were thinking about, Christine Start's going to be taking a look at what we would normally need for Eagles Landing and possibly sending something out to those people about the potential, to come back. We don't know how many kids will come back. We might have more kids coming into a program, might have less kids. So again, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going to happen, but obviously if we can't have kids in the building over the summer, we're not going to be able to have Eagles Landing in our building, in any of our buildings. So it really is up in the air until we get some guidance for social distancing and how we're able to do that.
Any questions? Okay, 2021 school year, I think we covered as well. Our Board of Education recognition. I don't know if anybody has had any thoughts. I mean, normally we do our recognition. Do we do it in June? May?
Yeah,
June.
June.
I mean, I think we would all like to still do something to recognize whoever was still on our list that we didn't recognize the last time. Does anybody have any thoughts?
I think that's a good idea. Just going public with it in as many ways as we can, recognizing, the retirees or the, anybody with special circumstances or whatever that we had already on the list. Christine, I'm sure has a list of some list anyway.
Yeah, and I think that we
Make it
could,
as public as we can be
yeah,
about.
we could probably set up a Zoom type of a thing like this, and do it virtually. Because you can have quite a few people on this, so.
The same setup as we do in June, right? We would just we just wouldn't have them there. We would still recognize them at the board meeting.
Right.
Yeah, we could still recognize them at our regular board meeting and just send out, specific invitations to those children and families to join us on our
And then mail
meeting.
them special, their certificates or whatever
Yeah.
they would get.
Yeah, because we also have a few teachers that are going to be recommended for tenure in June. So that'd be nice to still be able to do that and send them some
And our retirees,
retirees.
and our
Right.
kids.
Right. Now, again, it'd be nice if we're able to get together over the summer with what's going on with health issues and have like maybe a picnic or something. But, again, you throw something out there like that and then we're not gonna be able to do it anyway, but, or maybe even something in September, if they're still around, we could do another recognition in September. So, keeping things open and we can always recognize people twice, so.
Well, let's think about June for, our June one and see.
Oh,
what
for
we-
sure. Yeah, for sure.
I think I certainly don't want to detract from the tenures and the retirements and the other achievements that we're going to recognize in June. At some point, I think we need to do something to just collectively recognize everybody. I mean, you listen to the stories that Melissa is telling about the lengths and the efforts that our teachers are going to, our custodial staff, the work that they're putting in. So that's a conversation for a different time, but I'm just really blown away by the above and beyond. And I think we can all agree that our staff is pretty above and beyond anyway. But the lengths that people are going to right now to make things work in these circumstances is amazing, really.
I agree with you. Totally agree. And maybe that's something we can talk about, just talk about virtual celebration and try and maybe do some research on that and see what possibilities are out there that we could pick up on and make our own, and
Yeah.
do something specific and get everybody, a lot of people to sign on.
Luckily, we have a secret weapon with Mike Drezick and Deanne Polian. They can certainly help us with that. They have a lot of great ideas.
Great.
Great, thank you. Next is our meeting date revisions. So May 26th will be our regular board meeting at 7 p.m. Our budget hearing will be June 2nd, also at 7 p.m. June 9th will be our deadline for our annual budget vote election by absentee ballot. And then June 16th will be our regular board meeting at 7 p.m. So everybody can add that to their.
Christine, are you going to send out revised invitations for that? You can just give me a thumbs up. You're muted. So
Yeah.
thumbs up, thumbs
I
down.
can send out
Am
a
I on my
calendar
own?
invitation, but Charlie will still have to send the links out separately.
Yeah, we could
Okay.
get it on
Well,
a
then
calendar
make
at
Charlie
least.
send out the invitations.
Yeah, I know he's got to do something.
So
Yeah,
what-
do
Make
something,
him
man.
do it.
Come on.
What else do you have
what
to
I'm
do
gonna
right now?
what I'm gonna do for the next meetings is just send the Zoom link so that we don't have to try to go through the Google Calendar, because I think that's how things got a little mixed up today.
Okay, then I'll send out the calendar invites and he'll send those separately.
Right.
Okay,
May I add on one quick discussion item or a couple questions?
Sure.
sure.
Obviously, a moving target in a lot of ways. The upcoming election, June 9th.
Mhm.
The process, are people going to get a card and then a ballot?
Right.
Um,
So what we're going to do is we're going to be sending out postcards a day or two in advance of mailing out the ballot. So what we've done is taken all the people that we have in the registration book that we get from Erie County, and all those people will be sent absentee ballots. The postcard will let people know, that'll go to everybody in the district. And on the card, it will tell people what to do if they need an absentee ballot. On the card, it's going to let them know that if you're already a registered voter, you're going to get an absentee ballot. But if you need another ballot for somebody that's not in your house, that's not registered. So let's say a husband and a wife, and maybe the wife is registered and the husband's not, and they need one for the husband, they can call Christine and we'll mail out another absentee ballot, for the husband. Or any other child that they have. They might have an 18-year-old child that just turned 18, and now they can vote, so they'll be able to vote also. So we're trying to get all that done so that people have enough time to get their ballot, cast it, and mail it back to us so that we have it back by June 9th before 5 o'clock. So we believe that the dates that we have set out should work in terms of being able to get everything back on time. And in this process, we have also had to, Dan applied for a business permit with the post office. So when somebody sends back their ballot, we're only going to get charged postage for the returned ballots. So if some people don't, and they just forget, or they don't send it in, we won't get charged postage for any ballot that's not turned in. Because we're going to be sending out something like 12,200 absentee ballots to people.
so obviously, this is an unplanned expense, this election. all
Right.
around too.
Right. And we're going to try and claim that also. Dan's working on being able to look at that through FEMA, because it is one of those things that normally, what do we have, like maybe 50 or 60 absentee ballots that we send out on a
A
yearly
little
basis?
less than 100.
Okay. You know, so this is a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And is that going to be by mail only? Is there a possibility of putting a Dropbox, a locked Dropbox, if somebody wanted to drop it off like that day?
I actually worked with Marnie today on language for that we are going to add. I think it was in the postcard. But we added language with regard to that the deadline is 5 o'clock on June 9th. And the other option is to drop it off at 959 Beach Road. But in order to do that, they need to contact me in advance.
Okay.
Right. We just don't want people showing up. We want to make sure that somebody's there to collect it, you know.
Gotcha.
Is there going to be a way that the ballots can be scanned, Christine, or is that not known yet?
Yes. Yes, I did talk to the Erie County Board of Elections. They are still going to provide us with 2 machines, which means we still need election workers. I've already spoken to the election workers. I have 5 on board. We need 2 per machine, and we did request the use of 2 machines.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's the ETA about these getting sent out?
Approximately, well, we're waiting for the printer to get them done. We're hoping before the 22nd, but at the latest, the 26th of May.
Cool, thank you.
Right. And the postcard will come out before the ballots do.
We didn't get any applications, did we?
No,
For board members?
Yeah,
Right, for the board?
no.
No.
interesting. Good.
So the only 2 people on the ballot will be Carla and Mike Franey.
Hey, Mike, congratulations.
You also, Carla.
Well, you have to get a couple
When
votes.
did we pass the deadline for that?
Yes, it was it was a close of business day yesterday.
Yesterday, that's why I asked. I know there was some talk out of Albany about delaying it 3 weeks, but it didn't go anywhere. So I think it's closed.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions on that?
No.
All right. I think that's it for our discussion items. So at this time, may I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the employment history of particular individuals? No action will be taken during an executive session. Just for the public that may be watching, the recording will be paused while the board is in executive session. Once we finish, return to regular session, it will be started again.
So,
Okay, thank you, Jen. I'm going to hit the stop live stream now.
We need a motion and a second.
Oh,
We need a
sorry, I
motion
thought-
first.
Carla, second. So moved.
Okay.
Second,
Chris, second.
Thank you.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed?
Okay, I'm going to stop live streaming.